Piers, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us in the Medium View on ENCA this hour. Now, Sadc, I've done several interviews since early last year as the conflict was unfolding and getting worse and worse in Cabo Delgado. And the Mozambique government didn't seem, from the interviews I've done in Maputo and here, willing to allow Sadc in. And Sadc said that they can't interfere because Mozambique is a sovereign country. Is it fair to criticize Sadc's lack of involvement?
Well, Sadc is kind of caught, it would seem, in terms of being able to impose its will. There is some member states who have raised the question as to whether Article 6 of the Mutual Defence Pact in Sadc gives some right to actually make that intervention without the approval of the host or the domestic country, in this case Mozambique. Of course, this is uncharted territory for Sadc, and there is a history and a tendency for caution with respect to engaging on these issues. Interestingly, it's been Zimbabweans, elements from within government and from within the ruling party, ZANU-PF, that have made the suggestion that Article 6 could be invoked. However, reading an academic article that was published last year on this, there's some question marks around it. So there tends to be a kind of crab-like shuffle sideways, backwards and forwards, that hasn't really resulted in gaining traction with the support of Maputo. And of course, the sort of supreme irony that it is Mozambique that is currently chairing the regional body. We hope that we may see some more decisive action come this Thursday, but frankly, many people are really very concerned that we're simply going to see the can being kicked down the road again, in a context where clearly the security situation is extremely disturbing and worrying, not to mention the humanitarian outflows, which have worsened considerably over the last 15 months.
Yeah, last week I spoke to a senior Frelimo, veteran Frelimo leader who was on his way to Dar es Salaam after touching down in Pemba, and there have been meetings last week in Mozambique with the Defence Force and the Political Commission of Frelimo, the governing party, and they seem to be approaching this as maybe as a first step. From what I could read, this is not confirmed, between Tanzania and themselves, because most of the activity has been happening around the Rovuma Basin.
Yes, that's true, but we need to also look back and see that there have been a series of meetings over the last year and a half between Tanzania and Mozambique, most recently only a month or so ago before President Magufuli's passing. Between President Nyusi and President Magufuli, there was an intelligence cooperation pact and a recent pact in December last year between the Commissioner of Police in Mozambique and the Commissioner of Police in Tanzania, agreeing for improved border security, intelligence cooperation and so forth. So we've seen these repeated attempts and commitments to improve the situation, but how is this translating into practice? And I think that's the big concern. It has to be more than simply these kinds of bilateral siloed initiatives, and we need to see a much more integrated strategy. And increasingly people are saying that, well, Sadc can't do this. We should be looking at the AU at least in terms of trying to make more of an intervention. And we saw the AU last week pointing and looking at Sadc, waiting for some direction on this. So in terms of the politics of subsidiarity between the continental body and the regional economic bloc, it's important that Sadc come up with a firm decision in order to be able to lay that baseline for the AU to be able to make some decisions. But ultimately, all roads lead to Maputo. And if Maputo resists this, there's not going to be much intervention at all.
Yes, and the reluctance by Maputo, as we conclude now, Piers, over the last 4 years to get an integrated regional support to assist them, it just boggles the mind, because each time I talk to analysts and strategists like yourselves, it comes up again and again. South Africa, the Minister of International Affairs and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, last year, briefing Parliament in November, saying South Africa has told Mozambique, we are ready to assist you, even militarily, in terms of resources and otherwise, but Mozambique just not picking up their help. It just boggles the mind. Why?
Well, you've got to be very careful about this narrative, because on the one hand, Mozambique, or from within Mozambique, you're getting arguments saying that the region is not offering to help, and then the region saying we are offering to help. The important thing is that it's not about Maputo coming to the region or beyond to the EU and elsewhere with a shopping list for training, for equipment and so forth. It must be part of an integrated strategy that those helping can see how best fit to help. And at the moment, we have this disconnect. And this strategy, which has been promised by Maputo following the Sadc intervention in May last year, is still outstanding. We were meant to have a dedicated summit on Cabo Delgado in January. That was then postponed, and it was held out that this would be held sometime in May or June. But Palma and the situation in Palma has expedited a more urgent intervention, and that's what we're going to see on Thursday, or not, as the case may be.
Let's hope that strategy will be tabled then. Thank you very much, Piers Pigo. He's a senior consultant for Southern Africa at the International Crisis Group.